do most people misunderstand about mindset?
I think people misunderstand what it means with respect to, I would say, emotional content, and that is when we start talking about things that are dangerous, we start talking about things that involve people that want to harm us. A lot of stuff gets drug into that conversation, and a lot of people will sort of default to this idea that you've got to become an enraged maniac in order to deal with that.
Sure.
Now, if you feel as though being an enraged maniac works for you, I don't really have the means to to argue that perception away. But the reason that people feel like becoming an enraged maniac works for them is because when you are an enraged maniac, or whatever term works for you, it makes it easier to get past fear.
Sure.
Because nobody wants to be afraid. But if you are a sober citizen that wants to do the right thing, stay out of trouble, and is willing to walk forth, say as a CCW person, you're taking on additional responsibility.
Sure.
You are not afforded the luxury of becoming an enraged maniac.
That doesn't look good.
Enraged maniacs make bad decisions.
Agreed.
Example, and I'm not saying that police officers are enraged maniacs, but just look at if you ever see dash cam footage or helicopter footage of a high-speed car chase
Sure.
that drags on for a period of time. Now, unless you've been in a high-speed pursuit, it's really hard to get what's going on emotionally for all of the police officers involved in that pursuit. Because first there's the pursuit, but they don't have the luxury of just being focused on the suspect.
Absolutely.
They are managing everything on the periphery of that. So everybody who didn't hear the lights and sirens, who just randomly pulls out in front of this procession, and everyone has to, all of these near accidents, all of these pedestrians that are oblivious and have headphones in that almost walk into the path
Understood.
of either the suspect. So there's all of these problems that are going on. It's very dangerous. And the longer it goes on, the longer you're behind the wheel, and the siren is going, and when you're in a police car and the siren's going, it's deafening. There's so much stimulus, and there's so much information you're trying to process. You're trying to listen to the radio, and you're trying to communicate on the radio. The multitasking going on at high speeds while dodging all of this stuff is extraordinary. The longer that plays out, the higher the stress level for each person, that's part of that procession.
Yeah.
So there are moments where you see a sudden resolution. Okay, the suspect either wrecks or they suddenly pull over. And what sometimes happens is there's not enough suspect to go around.
Yeah.
You have become so focused on that person that it takes a great deal of objectivity to not jump on that person and start pulling body parts apart.
Understood.
Because you're so emotionally invested in that. You're not at your cognitive best. So police officers understand that. They train for that. They understand the kinds of situations that can sort of lure them in to becoming out of breath, stressed out, and emotionally invested, which is never a good place to be.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, one of the big problems or assumptions, misunderstandings about mindset, is that we feel that in order to rise to the occasion, that we have to be pissed off at the same time. And if we are angry, we make bad decisions.
Oh,
If we're angry, we say things that to people who are objective onlookers, yeah, I could tell that guy wanted to hurt him because he said X, Y, Z. He said words that were colorful and and censored normally.
sure.
So anything that sort of fuels into that is not helpful. Not helpful to you, not helpful to your circumstance, regardless of how otherwise legally correct you may have been, because you start sounding as though, you start looking as though you're angry.
Sure.
And if it's angry, then you're not responding objectively, you're responding personally. And a lot of things go away for you in terms of defensibility or justifiability just from that perception alone. So that's where anger sort of gets worked in. And I've seen self-defense instructors in workshops, on videos, coaching people on how to become really, really angry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a tricky business, because if I'm talking to a room full of females, which I've done any number of times, sometimes women have more of a struggle getting in touch with what I refer to as their inner horribleness than males. And it's a cultural thing. It's not because they can't do it. It's just because it's not encouraged. So I may suggest scenarios where it might become easier for them to sort of, channel a proactive attitude, if it involves not them, but someone they care about. Is it a child, or even if you don't have kids? I mean, do you have a niece? Do you have a, someone, a loved one that is more or less counting on you, or might be counting on you to save the day? Explore those feelings. But that's a lot different than, I remember one example very distinctly, 2007. This was an instructor from Australia conducting a workshop in Vegas. And he created this scenario where literally the responding trainee was just in a simulated, blind with rage type of framework. I was stunned by that, because it was the instructor was very smart, very experienced, but this was just ludicrous to me. We basically turned this guy into the Human Torch emotionally, and okay, now just go wreck everything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it played out.
That doesn't work out very well in the civilian world whatsoever, does it?
It just, and how effective are you? In that mode, like, when do you start? When do you stop? What did you even do? I don't know. I don't remember. Well, good luck with all of that.
And I can understand how, I'll go back like Mike and I always talk about, the other Mike, is I'm always a student. I'm learning a lot of things from everybody. And even 10 years ago, I would have said, when you start talking about violence of action, or you have to go from 0 to 100, I absolutely will say, to me, that was always an emotional thing, as I picture, like you said, okay, I want to try to get out of this situation to stay alive. Great. Oh, wait, now it involves somebody harming my children. And it's very easy to let the emotions of what I would do in response to watching someone try to do violence to my family, and literally even just thinking about get mad about it, let alone having to experience it in real life once, unfortunately. Absolutely, I lecture people all the time that emotions can make you make bad decisions. And like you said, there's a lot of trained people that say, I understand why they did that. It's easy to get moms and dads to say, I understand why they did that. That involved their children and someone who's, but as you said, a police pursuit, everybody's watching on TV going, well, there's a car and there's a couple cars chasing them. Completely different worlds going on inside. Every one of those drivers is, am I going to go home and see my kids? Am I going to see my wife or husband again? But I understand people have, me included, thought to myself that being able to go from a 0 to 100 if you had to was always like, oh, find some inner beast, find some inner, anger. And absolutely, I love what you're saying is that's not true, because I've seen people I've seen real violence and seen people capable of very good justified violence that they were machine-like. It's kind of like, well, I'll deal with the emotions later. Sure. Was I worried about living or dying? Sure. But they definitely did not look like the out-of-control Human Torch, as you put it. And
a way that I try to frame it And this is one of those things. A lot of people will take umbrage at my perspective as far as this goes. No, man, I got to just hulk out and be completely enraged and whatnot. It's like they're confusing what it takes for them, I think, to sort of get beyond the point of fear, which I understand getting past the point of fear is a big deal. I like to refer to the preparation when we're exploring just the emotional component is there are what I refer to as enabling emotions. Okay. What emotion would enable you to feel as though it would be appropriate to intervene on behalf of even yourself, because some people have a really hard time with that.
Yeah.
It's just like I've just always been taught that, it's not right, and so forth, or to intervene on behalf of someone else. So, an enabling emotion is not anger. Maybe I would split it and call it indignation. It's like, okay, what that person is doing in this scenario is simply wrong. It's unacceptable. I'm not standing for that.
Yep.
Now, that's not me getting all spun up. Oh, not around me.
Yeah.
An enabling emotion should be an ennobling emotion. So it shouldn't take you to a place that's not productive. And, the blind rage thing can very quickly take you to a place that's not productive. It's not good for anybody. You're not at your best being that person.
No.
So you need to think about enabling emotions, just to kind of what would it take to get me to that point? And that's for people who don't think they could get to that point. If you think you can get to that point, great, move on. Then you can start to think in terms of refinement. What's going to keep you in your optimal headspace in a situation like that? You talked about people who are well trained that sort of appear almost machine-like.
Sure.
It's because they're not appearing to be captive to the limiting emotions, fear most often, in those circumstances. That comes with training time. That comes with a lot of contemplation about what it is that we may be called upon to do, or we may call upon ourselves to do.